On February the 24th, 2022, 6 people took a boat trip, and only 5 of them returned to the dock alive. Nearly 2 days later, the body of the remaining boat passenger, Tangmo Nida, will be found in the Chao Phraya River in Thailand. Almost 2 months after Tangmo's death, the justice is yet to be served. Today, we will attempt to answer the question: what really happened on that boat on that February night, and what is yet to be done in order for Tangmo Nida's case to be solved? Detective Unit, the rage that you're about to feel, the rage that I'm about to put you through when watching this video is something else. I was to record it on the 15th because it was the long bank holiday weekend here in the UK, but because of a particular piece of information, I actually decided to wait until Monday and actually give myself 2 days off, which was wild. But today, then this morning, I was checking for any further information. It will all make sense by the end of this video, and still, there's not much. There's nothing really changed since I last researched this case. So let me give you a breakdown of why we are here. If you are not really new to this channel, you probably know that the cases that I mostly cover are international cases, usually cases of expats, immigrants, tourists in a different country going missing or being murdered, a lot of them being mysteries as well. And if you want the reason behind that, well, this accent does make me Borat's sidekick, but also it also makes me an expat, an immigrant, a person who came to another country and then now has its citizenship after staying here for a while, and the accent did not change and will never freaking change. But the point being, I mostly relate to these cases because they frighten the living shit out of me, because I know that my family, if anything was to happen to me, or like if anything was to happen to any of my friends who are in the same situation, that are somewhere abroad, people wouldn't know where to start. People wouldn't know where to start looking, people wouldn't know what the fuck to do, and people would want attention to be brought to this case. This case is of a Thai actress dying in Thailand in suspicious circumstances. So it's not like she had moved countries or anything like that, but still it happened in the international waters. And the countries in the West, and like usually in the UK, in the US, aren't really privy to the information. It isn't really spoken about here. So that is the main reason why I'm covering it, because I think more attention needs to be brought to this case abroad. Only Stephanie Su on Rotten Mango podcast has done that, and she's in the US, so I thought I'll do a deep dive on this case and the information that we have so far for the UK, to make you aware of it if you haven't heard of it. And my main goal is for people from Thailand really to collaborate. Consider this a group project. I need your Sherlock Holmes caps on. Because in this case, so many things are getting lost in translation. I'm struggling to separate fact from fiction, and I will be pointing out to literally so many things in this case where I just need a person from Thailand to fill in the gaps, to explain what the hell is going on here, in order for us to have the complete story. No pressure, no pressure. I did the work, I just need a couple of things clarified. And then I need people from Thailand to tell us, foreigners, internationals, people from abroad, what we can do. Are there any petitions? What else can be done in this case? After I tell you where it stands now. So I really hope that this case will have a part 2 once we actually have more information. But for now, let us dive into the information that we have to this day. As I told in the intro, the case happened in February. So it is a very fresh case, still definitely not solved. And just like with the Lost Girls of Panama, so much of the information is just people's theories. It's just people theorizing based off of the pictures and the videos that they have seen online, making this probably one of the most difficult cases to research for this freaking channel. So let us dive in, and as I mentioned, I will be pointing out to so many, articles or just points of contention in this story where I feel like somebody from abroad who has the access to maybe more media articles, maybe even some documents that I don't know how to even access, to let me know what I should be considering to be truth and what the rest of the world should be considering to be truth. So let me tell you the story of Tangmo Nida. And here we are to begin with her childhood. Here, really, I try to focus mostly on going through this case in a chronological order. So giving you the timeline based off of the articles that I found online, because it was a bit to research. Okay, Thai is a beautiful language that I unfortunately do not understand. And translating it was beautiful, challenging, and a mission in itself. So our story begins on September the 3rd, 1984, when Pataratida Pachavirapong was born. Some of the articles would be stating that she changed her name legally to Tangmo, some would be saying that that is a nickname, but that is what basically her stage name would be and what Tangmo would be universally known as. Tangmo means watermelon, so sometimes people would be calling her Melon for short, and that would be reflected in her social media handles, in particular on Instagram. But before we reach the point of Tangmo's fame, let me bring you to her childhood. According to most articles, Tangmo would be 5 years old when her parents divorced. According to some, they actually separated when she was only 3 years old, but then tried again to reconcile, to get back together when she was 5, but they couldn't. So they just again decided to go their separate ways. Now, this would mean that her mom would actually abandon the family. And according to most sources, the mom would return to Tangmo's life when she was a teenager, and you can see sort of certain pictures. I think this would be her graduation, where, Tangmo would be posing next to her mom and her dad. But officially, when she would return to Tangmo's life would be 2019, 2020. And we'll talk about that once we come to that point. But this would mean that Tangmo lived most of her life with her dad, and her dad would really be the person she would be most attached to. They're the sweetest pictures of her connection with her dad, just Tangmo throughout her life, and also from her memorial service that you can watch on this YouTube channel called CJ Connect. You can really see that she would have such a strong connection with her dad, like it would be sweet. She would constantly post and commemorate any sort of big successes in her life, also any birthdays next to her dad. And you can see that this was happening as she was growing up, that her dad was a constant pillar of support in her life. According to one single article that I actually managed to find, giving us some insight on Tangmo's childhood that I then translated from Thai, the reason for this separation and her mom leaving was that eventually she ended up having another family. Now, Tangmo will have another brother. I am not sure if this is the brother from the same marriage or who the brother was actually growing up with. Was it her and her dad, or was it with mom and that side of the family? So if somebody can fill that gap in for me, let me know, because the brother, only comes into the picture really later, and it isn't mentioned during the childhood stories. So basically the mom was living separately, and it was said that Tangmo would still, visit her mom through her childhood, but they weren't really close. And they weren't close because her mom had completely different views and visions for Tangmo. Tangmo would, according to this article, state later that growing up her mom taught her all the classy things, like she would send her to piano lessons, to learn ballet, to learn different dances. That she got discipline from her mom, and that her mom was also artistic because she studied fashion design and then kind of wanted to impose that onto her daughter. But however, they had different views and attitudes towards the world, so still Tangmo would, as a result, be very much so closer to her dad. Whether it is because of her mom's influence, because of the discipline that she learned from a very young age, or whether it is because she had to grow up fast because she was left to basically, well, fend for herself with her dad. In 1998, in a shopping center, this guy, which I would consider to be a creep, but at that point somehow it worked out for her, literally went up to Tangmo, approached her with his business card, and asked her to give him a call back for a modeling job. So at this point, she was still in high school, then she would go on to study at the College of Social Innovation, she would even go to university. However, on the side, she began working. At first, it was modeling jobs, just doing photo shoots, doing commercials. Then she started having small acting roles and also participated in Miss Teen Thailand in 2002. She lost there. From what I found, she was in 4th place, which was still freaking amazing for somebody so early in their career, but then would end up landing a contract for a TV at Channel 7 in Thailand. Now, at this job at Thailand 7 TV station is the only time where maybe she was considered to be not so unproblematic as she was throughout her whole career, which I also read only in one article, and it also makes me doubt whether or not that is correct, because literally she had no scandals throughout like her whole life. It was said in this article that in mid-2010s she would be boycotted by the Thai media for showing anger and aggression towards the media, and like probably paparazzi and people just following her because she was in the limelight. But then she would apologize to the media, and from that point on, she had no scandals that I could find associated with her name whatsoever. Now, before that, in 2007, so in our timeline, I think she is still, doing different gigs at this point, but her career is really heating up because, she already started working in 1998, so it's been almost 10 years now that she has been acting, doing modeling jobs, doing, sort of commercials, everything else on the side. And in 2007, she was in a car accident. And this car accident happened as she was driving home after doing one of the TV series. So she would be filming the whole day, and then she was in this car on the motorway, driving at high speed. Well, somebody else was driving, but she apparently wasn't wearing a seatbelt and just fell asleep before the car hit another car that was in front of them. The car started swerving and her whole body kind of jumped through the windshield or through one of the windows of the car. And this in turn kind of marred her face. A lot of people will say it disfigured her face. I actually found the articles, the original articles from that time. I will not be posting the pictures. It wasn't disfigured, but still, like she had, the swollen face, she had bruises, like her whole lip area was swollen, and because of that, she required some plastic surgeries in order for her face to be reconstructed in a way. From what I've seen, based off of her younger pictures and then later pictures, I don't really see much of a difference. It's just that I think it was the initial impact, and the pictures that I have seen are of her swollen face right after the accident. So, you guys let me know, experts on plastic surgery and stuff, but here I still think that she only did it basically, in order to save her face, because, well, her face was the moneymaker in the industry. After this, after having about 100 stitches to her face, then followed by plastic surgeries, she decided in 2014 to end her contract with the 7th TV station in Thailand, and in turn to become just the independent actress. From, again, most sources online, I believe the roles that she was landing would be in kind of Thai telenovelas. Now, I'm not familiar with telenovelas in, the Eastern countries. However, I grew up on a different style of telenovelas, the Mexican ones. And I just want to point this out because obviously I'm familiar with this style of telenovelas. Between 2014 and 2018, Tangmo acted so well and in so many, telenovelas, getting so many awards that in 2018 she landed a role for Netflix. Now, I'm not sure how common this is for telenovela actresses in the East, but for the Mexican telenovelas, this has happened twice that I know of. Maite Peroni landing from Rebelde and, like early roles as Marichui and Cuidado con el Ángel. This is very niche topic, I know. Well, landing a role at Netflix, I think last year, that show, Oscuro de Ceo, or whatever it's called, came out during quarantine. And the other one that I could think of would be Kate del Castillo, who literally, again, started in Mexican telenovelas ages ago, and then after years, probably a decade and over of her career, only landed a Netflix role. Where I'm driving at is that this is something that shouldn't be underestimated. This, in my mind, means that she was ambitious, that she was good, and you should put some respect to this woman's name, because to me, this is insane. I don't know if it is common, for people from Thai telenovelas in Thailand or just anywhere, like Malaysian telenovelas, wherever they are, to just land roles at Netflix, to get these good TV shows that people watch, but it isn't as common in the world that I know of. So she would get different roles in films and TV shows like Bus 888 Through Hell, Hor Taev Tak Hak COVID, The Conspiracy of Love and Evil, and then the Netflix one was called Innocence, Bangkok Love Stories. As for Tangmo's personal life, this would be a lot more tumultuous. Like, it wouldn't be as stable as her acting career was at this stage. So in 2013, she would marry another guy who was kind of equally famous. I checked his Instagram profile now, and she has similar amount of followers, which is over 2 point something million, so similar amount that Tangmo did. And, the guy was an actor and a singer, they married, but then they divorced only 2 years later. And through some articles, it is said that the pictures we see were of their engagement, but apparently in the interviews, Tangmo said that it was actually a wedding ceremony, that it was just private. They didn't share it with that many people. Now, from the articles that I read online, and here I kind of want the inside information from people in Thailand and people familiar with her private life in particular, I haven't really read, nice things about this guy. How do I say this in a politically correct way? From the articles I've read, the guy was punching above his weight. Even though he was equally famous in a way, it was visible that this relationship isn't, the cutesy little soulmate relationship that is going to last forever. And then from some articles that were in Thai, and I really wish somebody lets me know if this is correct, I read that this guy, so what's his name? Tona, well, Tono is his stage name or other nickname. I can't really pronounce his full name. Well, he apparently split with Tangmo on a concert stage while performing to probably thousands and thousands of his fans. Is this correct information? Because this is villainous behavior. This is actually villainous behavior. And because of the split, well, according to Tangmo's press conference later, not just because of the split, however, this will be a huge factor. Tangmo would actually overdose. She would take a large amount of sleeping pills, and luckily she will be found, she will be hospitalized, and they'll probably rinse her stomach out, and she will survive, but during this time in 2015 she will attempt to take her own life. The public in Thailand does believe that he was the main cause for this, because this suicide attempt happened only 2 days after the apparent public split on the concert stage. And Tono would say about this, he would kind of send best wishes and everything, and he would say that everything between them started from love, and that if he could turn back the clock, he would still choose to love Tangmo, but things didn't run as smoothly as he thought they would, and their relations may not end beautifully as we expected, which is such a dick move. And this truly breaks my heart because I found this article with the pictures from the press conference from 2015 where Tangmo spoke up about this. She spoke about the overdose, and she also ended up showing up to this conference with a bandaged wrist, which kind of appeared to confirm to the public that she also tried to cut her wrist on top of the overdose with the pills as well. She ended up apologizing to her dad and also admitting that this split was the key factor, but she also said that it wasn't the single factor for her attempt at her own life. She said that the relationship had been troubled and it had been so for a very long time, but she always kind of held out hope that they would someday get back together. So, from this point on, so 2015 onwards, I personally think just because of all of the articles that I have read on this case and on Tangmo's background, that there were some underlying issues that we are just not really aware of about her mental health, about her depression, about probably other stressors and factors in her life, because depression will be kind of mentioned throughout most of these articles, but it just wouldn't be openly spoken about. And that is something, I mean, if you look at certain cases in, Eastern countries, whether it is Japan, Korea, China, Thailand, whichever you look at, the suicide rates are high. And this is because really people don't publicly speak about their mental health. And it does need to change, and truly, I kind of try to think how much different this case could have gone, had she publicly opened up about this. But from this point on, at least when it comes to Tangmo's personal life, things started looking up. And that is because of a guy with a nickname Bird that came into her life. Well, rather, according to YouTube comments on the videos that I have watched and also other articles, Bird was in Tangmo's life for about a decade, or 7 to 8 years at least at this point. He was that guy in a friend group who was kind of like observing from a distance, but never thought he was worthy, never thought, that he can shoot his shot because he sees this amazing person achieving her goals, getting a Netflix series, and he's like, who the hell am I to approach this woman? But now the things have changed because Bird finally figured out, well, she's going through a divorce, she clearly needs emotional support, and he started soon chatting with her. Well, from apparent interviews that Bird or Tangmo had given in the past few years, Bird started sending messages to her social media profiles, and they're usually managed by, we'll speak about those managers in a second, or they're managed by other people. Whoever was in charge of responding to her fans wasn't Tangmo herself, because you can assume that if somebody has over 2 million followers on Instagram, they probably have somebody in charge of that. And Bird knew that, he knew these messages weren't personal, but he still sort of attempted to get close to Tangmo, and he often even went to bars next to where she lived just to see maybe I come across her, maybe she just decides to have a casual drink and I see her at this bar. And soon enough, because of this effort, because he was a business owner himself, he was in that friends group, it paid off. And they finally started dating in 2020. According to this comment that I found on a video from a person from Thailand, or somebody who understood all of the interviews that Tangmo has given, she has just finally gotten to be happy after the years of heartbreak, of depression, and her suicide attempt. And she would say in the interviews that she hit a jackpot when she finally found her soulmate, referring to Bird. However, then in 2020, something else tragic really happened for Tangmo. Her dad ended up having prostate cancer, and there are again pictures of her by his bedside in the hospital. And she ended up losing him in September of 2020. And as you know, she had a really strong bond with her dad. He was her supporter throughout her whole career. And I can only imagine how, her battling depression for all of these years, how this could have just been yet another trigger, despite all of this great career that she had, despite of now her being in a happy relationship, how much this could have affected her at this point. And if you remember, I said Tangmo's mom would, return to her life when apparently she was in her teenage years. I never read that mom and dad reconciled or that they started living together, that they got back together. Nothing like that. I just think that the mom was kind of in her life more, maybe seeing her more. But this, so 2019, 2020, from most sources, is when she officially came back into Tangmo's life. Some articles state that it is because of her depression, some say it's because of dad's death, and some say maybe it is because she was at the height of her career. So at this point, 2020 and 2021, and really all of the time leading to her death, Tangmo would, according to her Instagram page, have two managers that were in charge of her career, that were in charge of her accounts as well. So one of them, the first one that's listed on her page, would be this woman called Anna. We don't really know zilch about Anna, to be honest with you. I don't know if anybody else does, who is there, who, maybe knows about the entertainment industry, but Anna wouldn't be one of the people involved in this case. Rather, her name only pops up in one of the theories related to it. The other manager, however, is called Gatik. Okay, so this is obviously, just like so many names in this story, not her real name. I think a lot of these people have the English versions of their name, and in some sources I have read it's Kratik, in some it's Gatik. More of them say it's Gatik, and I'm gonna stick to that. I can put, their real names on the screen. It will eventually pop up in this video. So Gatik would be the second manager. And according to only one article that I found, because I really tried to dig and find when did these people come into Tangmo's life. And again, if you're from Thailand, if you know, drop it in the comments. So Gatik, according to one article, apparently was, in Tangmo's life, being in charge of her career for at least about 10 years. And Gatik had a daughter called Easter, and Tangmo was really close to both of them. So according to some articles, they even lived together. Whichever way it happened, Tangmo was said to have adopted Easter, her manager's daughter. Now this, from again most sources, isn't a legal adoption. Some say it was, most of them say it wasn't, and that, she was just sort of there as support because the baby daddy wasn't in Gatik's life. But, from all of the social media posts, you can really see how much Tangmo cared about Easter. Like, for years, you can see this child basically growing up next to Tangmo. If somebody knows the age that Easter was, I couldn't find that online, nor could I find any background on Gatik about like her previous jobs, how they met, anything like that. But, from the social media posts, you can see that Tangmo would share any sort of activities just as if she was this child's real mom. She would read the fairy tales, read all these books before they would go to bed, take them to school, do other different activities, and she even had the name Easter tattooed on her. And that amount of limited information brings us to February the 24th. So before we dive into the night of, what do we know so far? With the limited information, what can we really gauge? We can gauge that Tangmo has been through a lot, but that she had a circle of people around her that she trusted. If Gatik has been in her life for about 10 years, you can really deduce that she probably trusted her, trusted her enough to adopt the child, to actually take care of her child, to share different things with Gatik. You can really see this woman sometimes in Tangmo's clothes. Apparently, obviously Tangmo would be aware that she's, borrowing her clothes, that it was kind of like a strong friendship. Apart from that, she obviously had a close bond with her family, rather her dad. And because of this, because of the circle of friends and family and the boyfriend that she trusted and had on her side through her career, well, she suddenly lost part of that support with her dad dying. But again, she had a good support bubble surrounding her, even through her going through some mental health issues throughout the past couple of years. So February the 24th comes around, and I am not sure who was the instigator of this idea. I don't think that that is really known online, but there was a suggestion of a boat trip. So a perfect night out was put into a plan. 5 friends plus Gatik are going to go have a dinner at a restaurant by the river before then jumping on this speedboat who apparently somebody had a license to, and there was a boat owner as well among this group of friends. Now, I haven't found pictures from the restaurant, but it is said that they had a dinner there, and then they bought 2 bottles. I think it was a bottle of wine and a bottle of champagne. In most articles, it is said that they bought these drinks at the restaurant and then took them onto the boat. Now, this boat will leave the dock at Thornbury Bridge at around 9:30 p.m. on the 24th of February. And it would be heading towards Nonthaburi. So this was like a different district. But there were all of these different docks on the side, and this is a river, right? Like they could stop at each and any dock. The plan was, from, everything I've seen, just to go on this boat, have a couple of drinks, have fun, pose for some pictures, because there was this really nice bridge, really nice scenery nearby, and then just return, because they already ate, they're just gonna have some drinks and have a nice fun out. The 6 people that were on this boat were Tangmo, then her manager Gatik, another friend of Tangmo's called Sand. A man named Job was also said to be Tangmo's friend, and he was a barber. Then there was the boat owner himself called Por, and there was the skipper, so the person who was in charge of actually maneuvering and riding this boat. Is it riding a boat? Is it driving a boat? What do you do with a boat? Well, this guy's name was Robert. In a lot of articles, he's just known as Bert. I'm just gonna call him Robert, because why would you give Robert a nickname Bert? Why would you give anybody a nickname Bert? Anyways, they take the boat ride from Thornbury Bridge towards Nonthaburi province. And we don't really know much about these people. We don't know really much about their background. We are, from most articles, to assume that these are high-profile people, people of high status, that Bert is the owner of the IT system company that works for one of the Thailand's biggest banks. Sand, according to the articles, is the regular Hermes hunter in high society. The boat owner, called Por, is the son-in-law of the biggest chief of police in Thailand. Job is the owner of the Premium Gentlemen's Club in Bangkok Prime area. And then Gatik, from all accounts, only had that one job, working for Tangmo as her manager. I don't really know how much she would be getting paid for that job, but we know that she had probably the strongest connection to her out of everybody else. Now, to speak of this boat, it is a typical speedboat, I would say. I mean, it does look nice, not gonna lie, it does look like, somebody with a high profile status would take out for a ride. On the surface, it looks like it would be a dream night out. You just have dinner, you have some drinks, you take some pictures with your friends on this speedboat, you have a boat ride, you come back to the dock, you go home, and everybody's happy and jolly. The boat itself, what is important about him is that it isn't huge. It is a regular speedboat. I couldn't find the length and the width of this boat anywhere online, but even for 5 people, I would say it is great for a ride around the river. It isn't like going to make everybody super comfortable. It's not really a boat where you would go and then have, I don't know, 10-hour ride. And also on top of that, these speedboats somehow do have facilities, do have a toilet on the boat itself, which I first looking at it thought how, where. So of course I did Google searches about toilets on speedboats, which if you have claustrophobia, just don't go on these, please, because this is what the toilets on speedboats look like. It's literally like a dungeon. It's a horror story in itself. So this boat did indeed have a toilet, however, apparently it was used for storage. So either it wasn't functioning because, you know, the facilities of it weren't functioning, or according to their testimonies later, it would just be used for people to store something. So you couldn't really use it on that night. Now on the boat, they're having drinks. You can see them with either wine glasses, Tangmo mostly, from what I could see, drank wine. And then I think I've seen a picture with Gatik holding more like a champagne glass. Basically everybody is drinking and having a good time. As you could imagine, with these people being, you know, high profile, being influencers, I mean, Gatik herself had a huge following on Instagram of about, I think, 200,000, maybe a bit less or so. But, you know, there was an opportunity there, probably for a sponsorship deal, for any kind of promotion, or just for a nice Instagram picture, if nothing else. So they basically start, you know, taking pictures. It was mostly, from what I've seen, Gatik and Tangmo. So, you know, just Tangmo herself, you know, there's a video of her drinking and sipping wine. And then also there's some pictures of Gatik or both Gatik and Tangmo. So from all the pictures I've seen, and I'm not sure if this is because, you know, only those pictures would be shared, because why would you share anybody else's picture? But it did seem like the focus was just on these two to be taking pictures, and the other people were behind the camera, or, you know, rather driving the boat. So they're drinking wine, and because of these pictures, they're not wearing life jackets. Now, the life jacket matter will become one of the points in this story that, honestly, I still think we don't know the truth to. I still don't think we know the correct information. And that is because Gatik, for example, would later state that they didn't wear life jackets because of those pictures. You know, they were just taking pictures for Instagram, the boat would be riding slowly anyways, there was just no need. Because, you know, you don't want the picture on Instagram with a life jacket on. But then, you know, different people on the boat, like the boat owner and the person being the skipper of it, would say that it was a different reason, that they just didn't know where they put those life jackets, where they were at that point. And I'm saying that we still don't know the truth behind this, because I haven't seen in any articles that the police has declared where those life jackets were. Did I find them on the boat? Did I not? Did I take them into evidence? If anybody knows for sure, again, let me know, and let me know the source of this information, because I really dug, because this is a crucial thing in this case. Like, why was none of them wearing life jackets, and where they were? Were they in that toilet that was apparently used for storage? Where were they? But this is where we really go into the murky territory, because people start speculating already based off of the images and the videos that were taken on this boat, beyond the life jackets. So there are images that Gatik and Tangmo have taken with this bridge called Rama VIII bridge in the background. And this YouTube channel with like 8-9 million subscribers, Nessie Judge is famous, and like I like her. I like that she, you know, has covered the story. But something that I have seen on her channel and on multiple other sources is that the speculation comes that, you know, the pictures that they have taken have actually been altered. Rather, the timestamp has been changed. Because according to them, the boat must have stopped, or rather was driving really slowly, but most probably had stopped for certain pictures in particular, and that this would have given at least 17 minutes, where either the boat is riding for particular angles of those shots, or it has just been docked somewhere in the middle of the river for about 17 minutes for certain pictures to be taken. Because we have a shot at 9:56 of Gatik and Tangmo posing, and then we have another one where you can see just Gatik at 10:13. And now people would later say that Gatik or somebody else might have actually altered the timestamp of these pictures, because according to them, the light on that Rama bridge switches off at 9 p.m. So, because people said this so matter-of-factly, they have stated this just like, yeah, this is a known fact, in my mind, then I'm like, this is great, because I can fact check that easily. So I Googled this in so many different ways, the light on the bridge, Rama Bridge. First of all, they didn't even state what bridge, so I had to look at bridges at Chao Phraya River. Listen, the amount of research that has gone into this. So I find the bridge, and the first thing that you see on Google is the busiest times, right, of the location, the busiest times of this bridge, and the busiest time is around 9 p.m. So like between 9 and 10 p.m. So that confused me. And then what confused me even more is that I couldn't find anywhere that the light on this bridge actually switches off at 9 p.m. So again, if this is some sort of inside information that people living in the area are aware of and just isn't really published on TripAdvisor, anywhere else really that I looked, let me know. But I feel like this is where, it opens up the gap for so many conspiracy theories. And also, when you really think about it, on the surface, it doesn't make sense. Because from the images that I could find on this bridge, this is a bridge that allows traffic. It allows cars to ride on it. So why would this bridge switch off all of its lighting at 9 p.m. if it's still open for traffic? Again, it could be that it's closed, it could be that this is when the light switches off, because people do state it so matter-of-factly. I just want people to question the information that is online and to actually look up things before stating it just as it is. And let me know in the comments, if you live in the area, is this correct information? Is it not? As for the last video that is taken of Tangmo, that in my opinion, on the surface it just looks like she's having fun. She's just sipping wine, she's flipping her hair, she's posing for the camera. Well, a lot of people pointed out two things in particular. One is the sound, because apparently there is a voice that in Thai says, "Bring your friend here," and this is a male voice, and then follows a female voice saying, "It's hard to convince Mo, Tangmo." And according to people online, this is super suspicious, like convince her what, who is the friend, what is going on. If I find it, I'll play it for you. So again, if you are Thai, you can let me know, is this what you hear? The second contention point of this video is that, while she's drinking the wine and then just playing with her hair, it appears as Tangmo might be using the universal domestic violence sign, where you put your thumb inside your palm and then the rest of your fingers are outstretched. Again, to me, it doesn't look that way. It just looks like she's enjoying her time. But a lot of people point out to these things, saying that maybe she was actually trying to signal to somebody that something else was going on. And if this is really the conversation, well, Tangmo was definitely to understand what was being said because she could speak the language. So is it possible? Yes, weirder things have happened, but as I mentioned, this is where we go into the conspiracy theory section of this video. As for what Tangmo was wearing, and this is important for the remainder of this video, she would have the clothes on, but underneath them she would have this one-piece swimsuit. And this was, normal. They were just to be on this boat for, a couple of hours and then return, they're drinking. It's fine, like she wasn't, none of these people were having like any jackets, any warmer clothing on, because the expectation was for them all to return to the dock soon. So at this point, couple of hours in, for what we are to presume between 10 and 10:40, really, everybody's just chilling. They have taken their pictures, maybe they have finished their drinks, or we don't really know. But from the later accounts, Sand, so one of Tangmo's friends, was just at this point chilling on her phone in the back of the boat. So she was just sort of like lying down with her legs folded and, just chilling, scrolling through her phone. And Tangmo shows up at the back of that boat where there's this propeller and there's kind of like a bottom stair to it, and she says she needs to pee. Now, nobody really clarifies, did Tangmo ever, go up to the skipper, to the boat owner, to anybody else to be like, hey, can you stop this boat? Can we go to a dock? Can we go back? Can we use this toilet that is actually on the boat that is used for storage? Like, can I just go pee? Maybe the flush doesn't work, but can I just go pee? Nope, according to them, Tangmo just approaches Sand at the back of the boat and then decides she's going to pee. She has that one-piece swimsuit on, so she doesn't take it off, but rather she now proceeds to hold Sand's legs, because she is basically lying down on her phone, so she kind of like holds onto her legs and then just decides to relieve herself at the back of that boat. By the way, if you usually only listen to the audio of these videos, this is the one where you actually want to watch. But in particular, you want to pay attention to the images that I'm putting here, because I thought of this in a completely different way. I don't know, I thought Sand's legs were up in order to kind of block her own view, because this is just bizarre. And nobody bothers to explain how is she relieving herself in a one-piece swimming suit. Like, is she just skirting you to the side? Is she taking it all off? Which she wasn't. And all of the other options, all of the other options that Tangmo would have had, apart from doing this, also just aren't explained. Like stopping anywhere. This river, they could have stopped anywhere within the matter of minutes. Actually using that toilet that was apparently used for storage. Like, would you rather pee somewhere which looks like a toilet in your own private space and then maybe not flush it? Maybe just then not flush, maybe decide one of them will flush once this toilet is back in use. Then do this. Go onto the back of the boat, which is next to this propeller, and just relieve yourself while another person is there in your presence. Use them as your own handle. And speaking of handles, the third option was for Tangmo to just be like, okay, Sand, can you, move to whatever the other area of this small ass boat, because this boat apparently had a handle that she could have held onto. She didn't have to have Sand in this part of the boat use her legs to hold on while she's relieving herself. But apparently, according to everybody's stories, this is how it happens. And it happens around 10:40 p.m. According to Sand's account of events, she would relieve herself, so she will successfully pee somehow through the swimming suit on the side. Somehow, Tangmo will relieve herself on this boat in this position. And then she was just going to try to, stand up, just go onto the frontal parts of that boat, but she lost her balance. She fell sideways into the water. And this is when kind of everybody just wakes up, because of course this would result in Tangmo screaming. You know, she just lost her balance, falls off the boat. And Sand at that moment was still focusing on her mobile phone screen, and Gatik was just lurking around watching the scenery. Nobody's noticing that this woman is apparently peeing at the back of the boat. Or rather, you know, they might notice and they might not just want to watch in order for her to feel more comfortable while the boat is still moving and she's just falling off of the moving boat. So as they're now alerted by this scream, you know, they go into action. And according to them, and multiple articles online, nobody can really agree how long they now spend searching for Tangmo. Yes, you have heard that right. They don't call the police, the rescue teams, they don't alert the authorities for, some would say 20 minutes, some would say up to an hour. And yet again here, we don't have the official timestamp of when the rescue teams will show up. In most articles online, I have seen 11:50 local time. Because in some of them I've seen 10:50, but that doesn't go into anybody's account of events if they have looked for 20 minutes and longer. So according to most of them, 11:50, the rescue teams come along. And the team immediately starts conducting a search of the crime scene. But you see, the friends, the 5 people that were on that boat, are still on that boat. They're searching for themselves. And then the rescue team arrives at the dock and they, you know, go on to their boats to search the waters without the friends there present. According to some articles, this gap in time, you know, whether it was 20 minutes or an hour that the rescue teams actually showed up, was because of Sand. Because Sand would be the one calling the police, and, you know, each time she was kind of confused about which exact location they were at. You know, the boat was moving, they were looking for their friend, so she wasn't really sure where they were. But the rescue teams are there now, and they have said that the river current was strong at the time, and the night conditions were quite dark. Like, the water was just completely black, even if you look at it. So the police was also contacted, and they tried to get in touch with a speedboat, but they can't really reach out to anybody. So they decide to investigate, and finally Tangmo's family is actually called. So her mom and her brother would be informed that she has just disappeared in the water. At this point, nobody knows what the hell had happened. And that will remain so, because the friends, they don't want to communicate with the rescue team here, they don't communicate with the family. They return to the dock. There is apparently CCTV footage of them returning to the dock around 1 a.m. So 2.5 hours, more or less, after their friend fell off of the boat. Without her, they have done their search and they're done for the night. So all of them decide to go home. Before they speak to the police, they speak to the rescue team. Gatik would later state that she actually stayed as long as she could have, but then she had to return at like 2, 3 in the morning because of Easter, because of her kid. They all return, and for the next 24 hours, none of them would be reachable. To the police, to the rescue teams, to, most importantly, Tangmo's mom and brother, who were just panicked, coming to this dock, along with Bird, just trying to help the rescue teams, trying to help them search for Tangmo. We have a saying back home that with these types of friends, you don't need the enemies. You don't. Simply, how is anybody going to treat you any worse than what the friends, supposed friends, have treated Tangmo in depth here? According to Gatik and this interview that was again literal translation from Thai, this is how this played out. You know, she has apparently had to relieve herself. She had to pee herself, but you know, the boat couldn't stop when Tangmo had to pee, but they returned to the dock. She had to pee, and so she went, found a toilet, and once she came back, everybody else had gone. So only Robert was there, and he was checking on her because she was the only girl left. So no, don't continue searching for her friend, but he is still checking up if Gatik is okay. After that, Gatik called another person to come pick her up and told them to meet her at the point where they took off because all of her belongings were apparently still there. Then they called the boat asking them when they were going to come back because all of her things were still on the boat, and she asked them when and how long it was going to take. She doesn't remember exactly when she retrieved her belongings, but she thinks it was about 3 or 4 a.m. and she was tired, she missed her kid, and so she decided to go home. And then she went into whoever Mo is, somebody's car, and she decided to take a shower. She also said to the media that she thought, because this obviously looked cold as fuck to everybody else, like you're her manager, you're her friend, you're just like, fuck these police teams and like rescue teams, I'm just gonna go home. She said, well, Tangmo is actually a good swimmer, so she would find a boat, she will find help eventually, and she will safely make it to the shore. So, yeah, that is the account of events that was initial account in this story. Now the next thing in this timeline, we have footage, and again I see grainy footage here. People see all of these 5 individuals, all of them meeting at a gas station. The timestamp here on this video is around 2 o'clock, so just after 2 a.m. And it is said that the man and Gatik, even though in the video markups I don't see that Gatik has been marked up with an icon, but again, you let me know what you think. So apparently at this point they have all met up at this gas station. They stay there between 2 and 3 o'clock, some say less, and at this point it is probably presumed that they're just aligning their story of what had happened on that boat. After this video footage, all of them disappear. For 24 hours, none of them can be reached, the manager included. Possibly they have aligned the story that night. Why would they respond to anybody? The panicking mom, the brother, they just don't respond to anybody about what had happened on that boat. Meaning, at this point, nobody knows about the Tangmo going on the back of the boat to possibly pee, or anything like that. They don't have this information. They have no fucking idea what had happened on this boat, or where their daughter is. They just know the rescue teams have been called. The most weight here obviously falls on Gatik because she's not picking up the phone calls of the mom and the brother of the woman that adopted her daughter, that adopted Easter, that was so close to her, providing for this whole family because she was technically providing for Gatik, paying the salary to her in order for then Easter to be brought up. No, she's just not responding to any of those phone calls. But it is said during this time that Gatik had her belongings, because she waited on the shore for her belongings to be returned to her, because that was apparently important. And people state, again, theories online, take it with a grain of salt, that this would be Gatik's phone. I couldn't find anywhere what had happened to Tangmo's phone. Was it ever recovered? Was it disposed of? The articles lead me to believe that we are referring here to Gatik's own phone. And then in only one article, I have found that only 3 out of the 6 phones have been retrieved from the boat. So again, gap in the information. If anybody knows it, let me know. So apparently Gatik has her belongings, she has her phone, and she deleted some texts during this time, and also even went onto Tangmo's social media, her Melon Instagram account, and people have noticed that the amount of posts have been decreasing. That in particular, she might have deleted the Instagram pictures showing that Tangmo can swim, so like pictures and videos of Tangmo in the water swimming, then some pictures with Easter, so Tangmo and Easter, and then like a random picture of a cat. It is also said here that, you know, this would have offered her the time to tamper with the timestamps. Whether it is in phone settings, I don't know how she would have tampered with the timestamps of when the pictures with the bridge behind would have been taken, but apparently this is when that would have happened. So now we're gonna go into the timeline of the investigation here, because I feel like this is the most accurate way to represent information, because it is the timeline of when the articles have been published. Otherwise, it is just literally a jumble of different theories. And then we are only going to discuss theories for like a brief segment of this video, because they're bloody insane. They're just fucking nuts. So the first point in this timeline is February the 25th. So this is the very next day, right? The five friends, very, very loosely using that term here, cannot be reached. They just cannot be reached by anybody, but the rescue teams are still on it. They're still searching the river. You know, the mother and the brother are there, and it is said that Bird is also on the shore, sort of crying, like helping them out himself. And immediately the family tells the police, listen, if she had just fallen into the river, Tangmo is a strong swimmer. Like, she has learned how to swim since really young age. She would have swum like to the shore. She would be able to actually survive. So some shady shit is going on here. And also I can't reach all of these friends that were on a freaking boat. Based off of the last piece information that they have had from the communication with Sand and like other people, you know, before they all disappeared, they have at this point been confining the search to People's Songkram Pier in Nonthaburi, because that was said to be the area closest to where Tangmo would have fallen from the boat off. But now, you know, by the afternoon that day, the searchers decided to extend it to cover 10 kilometers that was downstream from the Rama VIII bridge. And while the rescue teams are actually searching that, extending that search, getting even more people on it, well, the police is setting the goal for themselves that afternoon to actually locate these people. The skipper, the boat owner, the barber, the manager, the friend who is, what is Sand? She's a Hermes shopper. I don't understand her job position. All of them that were on the boat. So the friends get requests by the police to report to the police station. And at this point, during the first day of the search, as I mentioned, still nobody really knows of this bizarre story. The police believes that the actress just fell into the river as she went to the back of the boat, so this is what has been relayed to them. And they're trying to find whether or not the boat has the operating license, because they're just trying to find anything to hold these people accountable, like, you know, to get them behind bars, to get them charged, and then they can basically look into like, okay, what has actually happened, to find any grounds for questioning them. According to the articles online, the mom really started suspecting everybody at this point, but especially Gatik. And especially Gatik because she would later say, you know, that the manager failed her, like everybody failed her daughter here, but that Gatik could swim. And Gatik would later apparently in the interviews say that she couldn't, but then people called her out because there are videos of her on Instagram literally like scuba diving and swimming and shit. So why didn't Gatik stay behind? To just jump into the water, try to save your friend, try to save the person that is providing you with your living, providing you with the money to survive. Why is that not your first like instant reaction? Rather, your reaction is to disappear and then not be contactable to the family at all. So on the 26th of February, they have just returned to these searches, you know, still the body hadn't been found until 1:10 p.m. on that Saturday. And this is so fucking heartbreaking, but 38 hours after Tangmo fell from the boat, the rescue teams will approach what seemed to be a floating body about 300 meters from People's Songkram Pier in Nonthaburi province. And it was said that her brother was the one to spot it. So he spotted it, alerted the rescue teams, and then they arrived at the location and had taken the body from the water. It was said that the brother actually recognized her because of the clothes that she was wearing, and that he said, "I came to take her back home," adding that he is going to leave the rest for the police to handle. I'm now going to describe to you the way in which Tangmo's body had been found. I would seriously advise not looking these pictures up. I have actually found them when I first started researching this story, and then I tried to look them up again as if I hadn't had nightmares for 2 nights in a row and hadn't been scarred for life, just to, I don't know, try to gauge something else, I guess. And I couldn't, so I'm not really sure if they have been exterminated from the internet, because who the fuck leaked these images? Who is a sick person enough to leak them? I just looked them up to basically try to give you the portrayal of what her body had been found as, and the only thing I will be posting here would be the animated, like the drawings of it, and even those are graphic enough, even those are disturbing enough. But the way that I have seen this body is, I have seen, from what I remember, she was still in the swimming suit, and that is why the brother recognized her. And the first things that stand out to you is the huge, like 30 centimeter, I think they would say later, gash on her leg. Basically, this huge wound. It seemed like it was a very deep cut, like as if it went to the bone, like it is a humongous wound on her right thigh. And then the other thing that stands out is that, honestly, if it weren't for the clothes and probably like DNA and other things, you wouldn't be able to say that this is Tangmo from how her face looked like. Her face was completely swollen, like her eyes were just open, but the face was completely deformed and it was just purple in color. So, yet again, my search history this week was something else, because I wanted that explained to myself, because I don't understand why the face in death would be this deformed, this purple, why we wouldn't be able to recognize the person, like there are no wounds to their face. And the most logical explanation that I could find on the internet is this thing called livor mortis. So this is apparently one of the stages of death. You probably heard rigor mortis if you are in the true crime world. This is like when your muscles stiffen. Well, this is a bit different, and I'm gonna try to explain it in the most simplest way possible, and you again let me know if this is incorrect. But from what I understood, this happens because the blood isn't pumping any longer to like any parts of your body once you're dead. So because of gravity, basically the red blood cells go into a particular part of your body where the pressure is applied. So in this case, I believe that probably her head was kind of at the bottom of that river, as if she were upside down, and that is probably why something like this would have happened. And then because of that, all the blood cells kind of going into that part of the body, that leads to discoloration, and it can set in 30 minutes after your death. Let me know how bad I failed, because again, not a biologist or anything like that, but just I try to explain it to myself in some logical way, because these pictures can scar me for life. So that's why I'm telling you, just don't look up shit. Just trust that I'm showing you the things that you need to see in this video, and don't look up shit. You'll be fucking having nightmares for nights. Another thing that I read that would be interesting here, and I thought it will lead somewhere, as I was reading the article on livor mortis, it is that it's usually used to determine cause of death if we are speaking about, I don't know, carbon monoxide, hypothermia, other, different causes of death, but also that it's even more useful in determining the time of death. And I thought, okay, that is going to lead somewhere in this case, but then in no articles covering Tangmo Nida's case have I seen the time of death to be specified. So, yet again, just sort of using this as an explanation of why her body would have looked like in the way that it did. I'm not really sure that they did anything with that information, which would have been useful because then you can use that to contradict maybe any of the statements. And for people not to go into conspiracy theories when simply looking at the pictures of Tangmo posing in front of the bridge. Another note, don't look up liver mortis pictures. Just if you want to look up more on this, because I don't know, I haven't explained it well, look up the articles. Pictures, equally disgusting. Just don't eat during this video. Too late, Maya. Why not put that as a trigger warning at the beginning of it? It's like telling them now after you told them all disgusting fucking things and factors in this story. Another point that the public is familiar with at this point, so February 26th, is that apparently only one wine glass was found on that ship. So no other bottles, and from some accounts there were 2 bottles. Put a pin in that because I haven't found anywhere that people in the restaurant have been questioned, that anybody confirmed that there was receipt of how many bottles they have bought that night. Were they even bought at that restaurant? Where the fuck were they bought? But at this point, apparently only 1 glass was found. We'll speak about that more in a bit. So the public now knows that the body had been found and that the person driving the boat might not have been licensed to ride it. So let me loop you in on that information. The police had apparently actually looked into the records of the boat owner and the boat skipper. And what they had found is that Robert, who was helming the boat when apparently Tangmo fell off of it, would be facing charges because he was driving a boat without a license. So now they have found enough for them, because it was said that the owner of the boat basically had an expired license, and then the skipper just didn't have a license whatsoever. Something to do with the licenses that gave them enough grounds to now charge these 2 individuals for causing death by negligence and also driving a vessel with an expired or no license whatsoever. So they had some charges there, and again we'll speak about those later because those would be like the most prevalent charges in this case. But things already aren't lining up because this is also when the information about the life jackets comes to light, and these 2 individuals are saying to the police that, you know, they didn't know where the life jackets were kept. Meanwhile, Gatik is going to say to the police that they weren't wearing them because they were posing for pictures. These unlining stories bring us to February the 27th. So finally, this day, the public is going to hear about the story that they might have aligned on during that gas station visit. And the story that they have settled for is that Tangmo had to pee at the back of the boat where the propeller is, logically. So this is the story that eventually, because they have all been summoned to go into a police station, they start telling the police officers. The public will learn about the story of Tangmo going to relieve herself mostly through the interviews. I haven't really seen that the police statements have been made to the public as to what they have said, and like anything really police records related wouldn't be made to the public. But the next day, February 28th, according to the articles, every single member of that boat journey would actually go speak in TV interviews. And as you could imagine, the public learning this story wasn't really buying into it, into any of it. However, now I'm just going to relate to you the information that they have said in the interviews and then tell you what I think about it. And you tell me how you feel about this information. We only know of a couple of angles, by the way. Don't like lower your expectations right now. Lower them real low. Paul would say that, you know, him and Robert, like people on the front of the boat, like basically driving it, couldn't actually hear Tangmo sleep and couldn't hear the scream because of the sound of the engine, and also they were playing very loud music. So he would say that the boat wasn't speeding though, because this was the theory around this point, that the boat might have been driving at an excessive speed, and that is why Tangmo would have just sort of slipped up while at the back of the boat in whichever position she would be in. He also said everybody was drinking wine that they have bought from the restaurant, so that's why we have that information, but that nobody really looked into that restaurant, but that none of them was drunk. And then we only had Sand's statements in those interviews and a live that she would do, that we'll speak about in a second, where she said, well, you know, Gatik was probably enjoying the scenery and Sand was on her phone at the back of the boat, so with her head in her phone, she didn't really even notice. It's just that her friend let go of her legs and then she heard a scream. So she was the only one to actually witness that slip, sort of, at least. You know, she rather heard the scream and then realized, hey, her friend is in the water. So I wonder, to people who actually speak Thai, who have witnessed this story develop there, how did this sound to you? Because to me it sounds like they really tried to align this story, but still not to sound like it's copy-paste, because that would be too suspicious. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work anyway. Like, honest, I don't know what I would rather. I'd rather them just say the truth, just be like, what the fuck it actually happened here, because it doesn't work. We have seen the size of this boat. The people in the front saying that the music was so loud, we haven't heard anything, we haven't seen anything. Like, the distance between each and every person on this boat would be the distance between you and me. Well, rather this camera, but you know, metaphorically, you and me, or at best, where my Agatha books are, right? If I were sitting there, and yeah, it's the distance is between Agatha and you right now. And you were telling me you couldn't see and you were just not pretty, like you don't know where your friend is on this boat. And you have not heard it because of such a loud music. This isn't a club, this is a speedboat. And another thing that people don't really mention here is that Sand had never seemed to refute her original story of where she was on that boat. So even in these accounts of events, you know, she always kept saying she was in the back of the boat on her phone. And although that looks suspicious, it looks suspicious for different reasons, because why would you say that? Like, if you are saying that your friend went to pee there and then fell off it and you're the only person that could have possibly witnessed it, well, that kind of means like you might be implicating yourself. In my opinion, it might be because of all of the CCTV cameras on different piers and docks that she probably knew would capture it. So, you know, it was rather, let's keep what is actually true part of this story, you know, let's say that to the public. So if I get caught on CCTV footage or anything, then I don't have to back out. I can say, you know, I never lied, I was there, I was just on my phone, and then let's meddle with whether or not my head was in my phone, things that nobody could really confirm, even if there is CCTV footage, because it will be from a distance, because it will be grainy, etc. Let me know what you think. I just find it bizarre, because I have never seen Sand refute this part of the story, and I find that it implicates her rather than it excludes her. And you know, I always wondered why, because I think like partially this part of the story is true, of like at least where Sand was on that boat. This next piece of information I'm just going to insert here because apparently it happened during one of the TV appearances that Gatik had made, so I'm not sure if it is this one where she's hiding her face with the sunglasses and nobody fucking talks how weird that shit is, that she's inside giving an interview just hiding her eye expressions, because what else? Why else is she wearing sunglasses inside? But a piece of information comes out because obviously, you know, she's asked about the motivations, or rather, it is said that she volunteers this information. And that is that there would be no motivations for her to wish her friend harm, to actually, you know, not have her best interest at heart, because, well, with losing Tangmo, she would lose her one and only source of income, which is true. But people later would theorize that there might have been another motive, because on the surface, when you hear that, and if that was her only job, Tangmo was doing really well when it came to her career. Why would she want to lose that? Well, according to some sources online, and again, I haven't seen like an official document here, so take it with a grain of salt, but we know that Tangmo adopted Easter. I don't think it was official. However, there was what they refer to as accident insurance in the name of the child if anything happened to Tangmo. So Katik's child would have been insured, meaning that now with the death of Tangmo, the child would receive that accident insurance. But because Easter is minor, I don't know their age, but they're still under the age of 18, for at least a substantial period of time, those assets would be managed by her mom, by Katik. The next pieces of information that we have from the articles are from the next day, from the 28th of February. So here things kind of start moving, at least you think they do. The mom was to go to the police station to hand over evidence of a message chain that apparently took place between some of the victims' friends shortly after the incident. And the police officers said that so far the testimonies that the friends have given to the police correspond with each other, but they are lacking in detail. So, they called them back to the police station, and this time they said they're going to go through lie detector tests, that they're going to be submitted to polygraphs. And at this point also the police starts uncovering CCTV footage. In particular, this article refers to the video clip that was taken from one of the CCTV cameras that shows the five friends arriving at the dock at about 1 a.m. that Friday morning, so 2.5 hours after the incident, and that none of them was at the actual pier that would have been the closest landing point to where the accident took place. At this point, though, they still were waiting on the autopsy report for Tangmo and also on the tox results for the five friends, which again I haven't found anywhere shared, whether or not they have actually done the toxicology reports and at what point, like how would they have made those deductions if they couldn't reach to friends for at least 24 hours, how much alcohol would have really been in their system. I'm not really sure where the gap of information here is. However, they had those arrest warrants for negligence. So they have issued those warrants for causing wrongful death by negligence for the skipper and for the friend that was the owner of the boat. So Poor was to face an additional charge of using a boat with an expired license, and both of them would be released on bail. So, in terms of CCTV footage, let us talk about the grainiest footage that I have seen in the history of me covering cases on this channel, and the couple of points that people point out to when looking at it. Again, nothing here has been officially confirmed by the police, so this is where the theories start circulating, but I have to point it out because otherwise I will not hear the end of it. And I have to admit, some of it just looks shady. If this is the correct boat, if this is the actual footage of the evening, it does look like some odd shit is happening. So the first thing people point out to is there's this distant footage of this boat, and it seems like that the boat is speeding, that it's going at some like insane freaking speed. And here the debate always was whether the boat was ever speeding and this is why Tangmo fell off of it, or whether it was the complete opposite. And if it is a complete opposite, then why couldn't it stop at any of the docks for her to actually relieve herself? Then there is a video of a possible splash, like as if something is dropped into the water, falls into the water, and then there is somebody at the back of the boat, and there's something white in the water, so you're kind of thinking like, I don't know, people's theories are whether somebody's head or something is pushed into the water, whether this is when they disposed of any other evidence like glasses and bottles. Why is somebody at this part of the boat? Why can we not see how many people are on the boat in this CCTV footage? All of that. And then the third one is the possible video of a struggle on this boat, where it seems like there are two people kind of having a scuffle and someone might be just taken by the hair and then pushed, but we don't see like the splash, we don't see them fall into the water. It just seems like some sort of scuffle happening on there. I would really like to know your theories. What do you see here? Do you see any of it? For me, the most suspicious, like, you know, it's once you hear what people see that you kind of think like, okay, I see it, even though it is the grainiest footage. But the most suspicious to me is the one in the back of the boat, where you're thinking, well, what are you hiding? Like, are you putting somebody's head under the, like, what is going on? What is going on? Because now when we actually talk about the first autopsy and the cause of death, just have these in the back of your head, because certain ones might fit, you know, into the bigger picture here. This brings us to the 1st of March. Okay, the first week of March, the first and the second week, is when things really start happening, and literally everything that is ever uncovered in this case happens during those weeks, and then it starts dying down, and that is why we are here. So 1st of March, the police decides, and this is according to the articles, let me know if this is wrong. Again, we are questioning everything here. According to the articles, this is common in Thai police practices to do reenactments. So basically all of these 5 friends were to go on the same boat, the exact same boat, we're gonna talk about this, on the exact same boat. They were gonna go onto it and basically just try to tell the police what had happened. So all of them go on with a life jacket and they reenact where they were, what they saw, what they heard, all of those shenanigans. I now am going to let you in on how I research foreign cases, just for you to understand the insanity that I go through. So I have Google Translate open, right? And if the article in English fails to give me the information on what I'm looking for, then I put a keyword or sometimes keywords into Google Translate. So here that was reenactment. Then I trust Google Translate, which might be a mistake, and I copy the translation into a different tab, attaching it to Tangmo Nida, attaching it to whatever in this case, and then, you know, the first few articles, I click translate when I go into them. And I could only find one piece of information on these reenactments. So I think, again, police might be keeping those close to their chest. Or I might be wrong, or I might have looked for different wrong keywords in this case. The only piece of information I have here is from Sand. So this is apparently, according to the article, her reenactment here. You let me know if you have read any articles that give us more insight about other people's reenactments and, you know, what they have said. So according to Sand and other people witnessing this reenactment, because people can't hide from like what's going on, you know, probably the media alerts them that something is going on, this reenactment is taking place, and then there's crowds and crowds of people on the docks witnessing this. So they went out to the Rama 8th bridge where, you know, they have taken all of those pictures. And then they drove the boat to the spot that Sand claimed Tangmo had fallen, because Sand would have been a crucial witness in this story. So this led Sand to reenact how Tangmo went to the back of the boat, how she held her legs to pee, showing that she then fell into the water. And this is probably why we have all of these images, drawings of how this had happened, because those would be based off of Sand's reenactment. And Sand Wood, beyond this reenactment, on the 1st of March, she was busy. She went on Instagram Live that was seen by over 200,000 people, according to just the snapshot that I have of that live. And she went on to tell the public the exact same story that she told the police about her friend holding her by her legs, and then at one point she looked up and Tangmo was already out of her grasp. I find it funny, and when I say funny, I mean disgusting, you know, the untraditional translation of that word, how they couldn't have been reached by the police, by rescue teams, by the family members, but then when they went out on their own PR campaign, they're suddenly just openly talking about this whole story, suddenly fessing up. It's like everybody's saying how Tangmo was out of their grasp, but it is a speedboat. It is a fucking speedboat. So let us speak about the issues when it comes to these reenactments that I have seen. First one being the boat. Okay, so the first week of March, as we know, these reenactments are happening, and it is said that Sand went first to reenact this account of events. She was followed by two other men, so the boat owner and the skipper, and then Gatik, and one of the three men apparently didn't participate then because they were sick. So, there are multiple issues with this story, even beyond not finding information when it came to the reenactments, was the boat in itself. Yes, you have heard me right a few minutes ago. The boat that they have used was the exact same boat that should have just been, according to anybody with common sense, kept as evidence. Well, apparently, they have already done all of the examinations. The CSI, the forensics, have already forensicated this boat. They have already done everything that they needed to do for it, and then they have parked up this boat. There's a picture of it. There was a whole parking spot, whole as parking spot for this boat, where you can see it's not protected, it's not shielded, no, nothing is happening. It's just in front of the police headquarters, chilling like it's a car, exposed to all of the conditions. And then, you know, during this first week of March, they have taken this same exact boat, I cannot emphasize this enough, out onto the river. But not just the boat. The boat had that same exact propeller that apparently again has been forensicated. They had all of the evidence, and now fuck it, all of the evidence can be used. Imagine in all of the cases, if you didn't just put evidence into the evidence locker, if you didn't just preserve it, no, just let's use this evidence now to reenact the crime scene. What is this backwards thinking? So, they have put the same exact propeller into the boat when doing these reenactments, and guys, I cannot make this shit up. The propeller fell into the water. So then they have had divers and like people looking for this propeller, and they have found it. According to some articles, again, apparently this wasn't the same propeller that they have found. According to the ones I have read, it was, and then they just retrieved it, put it back in, and continued the reenactments. I so desperately wish I was making this information up. As the reenactments are taking place, the police is also going into the flats of the little fuckers that were on the boat, the supposed friends, and they're searching their houses for any sort of evidence. Rather, they're searching the houses for basically retrieving of any bottles of wine and liquor for examination. I don't know on what basis, because that makes me believe that they have found more of wine bottles and glasses on the boat. However, all of the friends at this point are admitting to have been drinking on the boat, but they didn't specify what they were drinking. Was it wine, beer, or spirits? And also, the evidence that they have retrieved included wine bottles, glasses, and plastic wraps, among other items. So this is from articles online. But according to some people on the boat, basically the friends try to dispose of this evidence. So we have different variations here when it comes to the alcohol and the bottles and the glasses. Either only one wine glass had been found on the boat, which is suspicious in itself. The presumption here is maybe there were drugs involved or somebody spiking a drink and something, and that's why they were disposed of. Then we have a version of events where some items or like different wine bottles and glasses have been found in houses of the friends, and this is still tested, and they're still trying to figure out whether or not this alcohol was from that boat, which I don't know. How do you find that information out? How do you figure it out if you don't have anything to compare it with? And then there are speculations that maybe the evidence had been disposed of, whether it was by somebody on this boat while on the boat, okay, or whether it was once they got off that dock and then they disposed it somewhere else. The former one more believable than the latter because of the CCTV cameras. So the most probably here would be disposing it into the river. The police, apart from now having the evidence and having examined the houses of the friends, also had questioned 77 witnesses. Some of those included fishermen from like the nearby docks that were there on the night of, and those witnesses have stated that the boat was actually speeding, so that is where they had that information from. Some of them were just like friends and family, basically speaking about the behavior of these people. And then they also examined footage from 60 CCTV cameras and 20 additional clips that were sent to police. Now, the 1st and the 2nd of March, again, things are moving because we finally have the details of the first autopsy come through. So the forensic examination, the first autopsy, confirmed that Tangmo had actually died by drowning. So her cause of death was drowning, meaning she went into that water alive. And for some reason, she had drowned. It was said that she had water and some sand in her lungs, so that is why they determined the cause of death. Also, that deep cut on her leg was said to possibly have been caused by a boat propeller. But the forensics couldn't at the time say whether she fell off the boat, whether she was pushed, and how that injury was sustained, and also did the injury happen before or after death. Another thing that they couldn't confirm is whether Tangmo urinated before she fell in and drowned, because she had been in water for that long, so any sort of urine would have already been eliminated from that swimming suit as well. About that wound on the leg, they did confirm it was about 30 centimeters long, and the forensic expert said that this could have actually been a cut that resulted in her major artery being hurt, which would have limited Tangmo's ability to then help herself. So that this doesn't necessarily entail foul play, just from what they had back then. Around the same time that this autopsy now is exposed to the public, people noticed that one of the friends that were on the boat, this guy called Job, actually had some cuts that seemed like scratches on his upper arm. So we like see him, I think this is like leaving police station or whatever, and literally like on your biceps, like you can see it seems like some scratches. So of course the police then had to make a statement that they had actually examined this, and the doctor confirmed at the press conference that these were not inflicted by a person's nails, and they were not caused by a struggle, rather they were about 5 to 7 days old, and it seemed like they were sustained by an object. Which, if they were 5 to 7 days old, that actually fits into this timeline, as to they would have still been sustained on the night of math. Yeah, they could still fit into that story. But apparently not caused by fingernails, nothing to see here, nothing suspicious at all. And during these press conferences, another piece of information that was made available to the public was that the police investigators checked the GPS system on the boat and actually had the details about the journey, so like coordinates, where it stopped, and its speed. But I haven't been able to find these online, just the statements. So again, I'm thinking whether or not the police is actually keeping these close to the chest, because this could be kind of crucial information when it comes to this case, considering, you know, whether the boat was going fast, slow, catching somebody in a lie during those investigations. Taking everything into consideration, at this point, the police chief is saying, based off of all of the evidence, that Tangmo's death appears to be an accident. So, as you could imagine, this is now, beginning of March. The public is just not into it. They are, protesting, they're requesting some sort of changes, and Tangmo's mom would be one of those people. She would be requesting the second autopsy. But before that, she does something extremely questionable. Again, I have read this in multiple articles, and people say that it is true, and I have not seen that she has denied it. So, she accepts money from one of the people on the boat, and she forgives them for this. And according to her, the one thing doesn't relate to the other. So the person that she had apparently forgiven is the owner of the boat, the guy named Poor. Apparently she had forgiven him, and the compensation that she had got for this was about $1 million or 30 million baht. And the compensation, she's saying, isn't related to this, rather it is the amount of money that Tangmo would have made had she stayed alive, based off of like her current salary on a TV program and her living for another 30 years. Which, Tangmo was 37 when she died. How is this mathing? How are we calculating, like, based off of what? Based off of her life? Based off of what is she living only another 30 years? Of course, this is heavily judged by the public, and, the mom would say that she forgave him because obviously, like, the boat owner, didn't really have much to do with it. He wasn't even the one driving it, and, out of everybody, probably might be the most innocent person, even though he was charged for, death by negligence. But of course, people point out to the more sinister aspect of it, or rather I will. The way I see it is either something had to be signed, some agreement had to be made despite of her, the mom, requesting the second autopsy. Something probably had to be some sort of exchange, because otherwise what is this man getting out of it? Just the forgiveness and he is losing $1 million? I mean, what else is he getting out of it? Because if this case reaches the trial, then of course something like this is going to be going into his favor. Because, the mom of the victim forgave him, obviously that means that this person isn't really involved, he's gonna get off scot-free. But on the other end of that, where I fear that this will go is if there was some sort of document, something signed, telling her, or rather maybe she wouldn't even be aware of it, that she couldn't pursue this any longer. That's where I'm scared this is gonna end up going. Because we will have now the results of the second autopsy, and that will go through, and that I find confusing if, I'm correct to think that there was something set in place, which I haven't read anywhere. But I'm just trying to justify why something like this would have happened, this kind of exchange, because it looks bad either way. It just looks bad for her, it looks bad for the guy, well, rather he benefits out of it more than anybody else. But I'm thinking, at some point, will it impede this investigation? Will it be that the mom, can't pursue it any further because she has kind of reached a pact with this man? So let us speak about where this goes from this point on. During the first week of March, the mom would go to Senate's Human Rights Committee, and she would give out the petition to the senator saying that the committee has the right to ask for information from the police because the case is of public interest. And the police, meanwhile, is saying that the second autopsy might not even be necessary at this point because they might already have sufficient evidence, which, shut the fuck up, you don't. And on the 11th of March, the memorial takes place. So, as I mentioned, you can watch it all, the 3 parts of it, because it was taking place over 3 days. You can watch the live stream of the service, especially if you followed Tangmo's career and also, can understand Thai. I will put some clips because I overlaid them before, as they include, some pictures and videos of her on social media, of her and her family. But during that weekend, the memorial services were held at Liberty Church in Bangkok. Over 1,000 people showed up, but the presence that probably would have mattered to Tangmo the most would be of her boyfriend Bird. He apparently bought an engagement ring at some point, not sure whether that was before or after her death, but he kept the engagement ring near Tangmo's picture, and people said that the note that he wrote was, maybe Tangmo wants to take it, but she doesn't know, she can't do it. The memorial service was followed by the demonstrations on March the 14th. So right as the days of the memorial service have finished, the demonstrators demanded that the team from the Nonthaburi either be replaced by the officers from the Department of Special Investigation or by a completely new team. The basis for them saying that was that the investigation saw little progress since this team was put in place, and they also demanded a second autopsy to be performed by a forensics expert called, I'm just gonna say the name that is easier to say, Portnip Rojanasunan. And she was a senator and a former director of the Justice Ministry's Central Institute for Forensic Science. She was a bad bitch, okay? This woman single-handedly, I looked her pictures up and I was like, okay, apart from Tangmo, this woman I can stand by. This woman, legend, just by her hair. Even her mask that she was wearing during this because of COVID and stuff, it's just something else. She has a tiger on her mask. Like, you just know this woman has the energy of like a fucking lioness. So, senior Justice Ministry official confirmed that she can't actually do the autopsy herself. I mean, she can, of course, she's a fucking legend, but as in she can't be involved in it, rather she can only attend it as an observer. Before we go on to the second autopsy, this is when the argument started circulating about, you know, the demonstrators, the media, how much it has actually influenced this case, how many conspiracy theories are out there, and how people actually started advising in the articles, like, you know, using the experts' quotes in mental health and stuff, being like, you know, just pay attention to something else. There's so many other things going on in the world. Pay attention to anything else, because brewing this up and, you know, sharing all of this information might result in mob justice. To which partially I agree, but then also I can tell you just from being deep into this case for about a week that had it not been for people literally demanding, using hashtags justice for Tangmo Nida, being on this case 24/7, we wouldn't have probably even 20% of the details that we have today. And another thing is, stop blaming it on the people and actually on those press conferences give public the information that they need, and that in turn would eliminate all of these conspiracy theories, would eliminate all of this misinformation, because certain pieces of information aren't even to be used, you know, for investigation practices, for interrogation practices, for them to just then interrogate, oh, this is the only piece of information that somebody like a perpetrator would know. Certain pieces of information just explain, like explain why was the same boat used for the reenactments, what happened with the propeller, certain things where it's just a mistake, it just looks bad on their part. And if the netizens, if the public online had a transparency about the details that are crucial to this case, then you could avoid all of that. You could avoid that quote-unquote mob justice. You could avoid the misinformation being spread and everybody over-analyzing all of the pictures and the CCTV footage. You know, yeah, it could lead to mob justice, but also it doesn't justify the shabby police work. Rather, one leads to the other. I don't know. Might be crazy. Might be just crazy. It's just a personal opinion. Which leads us to the second autopsy. So this had to be approved by so many people that it's actually ridiculous, because the first autopsy didn't reveal zilch. Tangmo's body would end up being moved on March 17th, some sources state it is the 18th, from the Institute of Forensic Medicine of Police General Hospital into Thammasat University Hospital in Rangsit on a campus. And this is where the forensic doctors are going to conduct the second autopsy. The conclusions of this autopsy were that they were looking for 11 points of suspicion, which makes me think, and this is, I just hope that I'm so wrong with this, just based off of like what I read, the boring things about how many members of the institute had to vote in order for the post-mortem even to be conducted again, the fact that it had to be supervised by the bad bitch with the wild hair, and it just makes me think, like, could they only look for certain things? Like, did that also had to be approved? Like, let me know if you know. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, were there only 11 points that they could look at and then they had to neglect everything else? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. After conducting this second autopsy, the conclusions were that the first one was done right. But the new thing that they have discovered are 22 small wounds on Tangmo's legs. The pathologists didn't find any face, any head wounds, anything that would indicate strangulation, for example, no broken teeth, no fractured bones, because the speculations here were always like maybe she was hit over the head with something, and that's why all of those bottles and like evidence have been disposed. However, as I mentioned, they focused on 11 specific points of concern. So let me break down those points and what they have actually found, because again, still offers more questions than answers, at least in my opinion. These were the points that would be available to the public, and the full report was only given to the mom that requested it, but the police was said to also be able to obtain a copy upon request. So the findings of this autopsy are there were no face wounds, no traces of head wounds, no neck wounds that would suggest strangulation, teeth and skull weren't broken. There was a burn wound on the chest that was examined, and nobody mentions anything on this ever again. Reports that were made regarding 22 cuts on the legs and wounds on the joints were made, they're written somewhere. There were no wounds on her back. The huge 30-centimeter leg wound, they still couldn't determine whether it was caused by a propeller. Then, when it came to urine in her bladder, it just says that the bladder was already rotten. So, I'm not sure if anything was found on the swimming suit in terms of urine or anything like that. They were still awaiting further examination results for any sort of brain examinations that they have done. Reports were made on windpipe and genitals, and her fingernails were taken for examination, and the clothing on the body seemed to be different from the first autopsy, but yet again, nobody really cares to tell us more about it. With these findings, everything that I have read just frustrates me even more, because in the press conferences they just try to brush it off, being like, you see, the first autopsy was correct, and I mean, the only deviation was that now there's just 22 wounds on her legs and not just one. If a human is 1 year old, and if there's another human, they're 22 years old, is it the same fucking human? Are they the same age? Is it the same exact thing? No, it's not. So how are we just discarding this piece of evidence? According to that article, when the autopsy came out, they said they're gonna have to wait for about 2 weeks for more details to be confirmed, because as you can tell, there are a couple of gaps here. And speaking at the press conference, Dr. Pornhip has said that the leg wound happened before Tangmo died, the 30-centimeter gash one. So the cause remains unknown, so they don't know if this happened because of the propeller, if she was cut by anything else. She said that the experts are going to compare the wound to other wounds from past autopsies in order to determine what caused it, and whether or not it was the boat's propeller. She also said that the findings of this autopsy, so any further information, won't be revealed to the media because it can affect the investigation process. that the police officers, doctors, and the inspector team will work together to find the answer for each question. A lot of people just aren't satisfied with these answers, but something that I wanted to mention here when it came to the long gash on Tangmo's leg is that people speculate, there was always the dilemma whether or not the boat was actually going fast or whether or not it was going slow, in which case why wouldn't it stop for her to go and relieve herself somewhere on the dock, like just find a toilet and then they can resume the journey. And there was this video that I have watched that I don't really know where else to fit, so I'll just speak about it here, by this guy who is familiar with boats, who is familiar with basically the conditions, and what he said kind of resonated with me and so many people, and that is that that gash would have really only happened, and everything when it comes to drowning, the cause of death, the sand found in her lungs, the thing that makes most sense for those types of injuries and cause of death would be that the boat was actually slow, almost even at a standstill, and that she fell off of that boat, and in that way her body would go under it, would go very close to that propeller, that injury would have happened, then maybe it would hit one of the main arteries, and that's why she was debilitated. He basically just talks about the boat position. He doesn't really know, how that would have happened with the body and like what would have happened forensically with it. Rather than if the boat was speeding, because if the boat, just suddenly started speeding, then her body would have just bounced off of it. So it wouldn't actually have any probably contact with the boat in itself. Rather, it would have just hit the water further away from the boat. And I don't know, that makes sense to me to have happened in that way. I just worry about what it says for this whole investigation. In terms of the actual investigation and where it is now, it really dies down from this point, from the 20th of March. We have a couple more pieces to talk about, each one more bizarre than the other. Starting off with the 20th of March, when two of the suspects, Por and Robert, have apparently left Bangkok. Well, they went to the province of Ratchaburi that borders Myanmar, so it borders basically a different country, and here they became monks. They were ordained as what is known as Brahmins, meaning they actually had undergone training for about 15 days. After that, they were not allowed to have sex, they had to eat with restrictions, and they weren't allowed to use cell phones. Now, the police knows of this because they're still investigating it, so they're following their moves, because these two are out on bail, so they're very much suspecting upon hearing this information that because of the proximity to the border, these two are about to flee, they're about to fuck right off. And apparently they haven't done so yet, but I think this might have been for another reason as well. Yeah, one of it could be that they are attempting to flee, that this is so close to the border, but also are they trying not to be questioned again? Because, those lie detector tests are still looming upon everybody, so that these two have just decided, you know what, hey, there's a monastery here, let us become monks. And also this would then exclude them from the press, they wouldn't be able to contact anybody through their cell phones, less suspicion must be casted upon them, and if you remember, hey, one of them at least was forgiven by the mother, so this just really further goes into his favor. As for the people behind investigating this case, they just don't seem to be one collaborative unit. Like, different parties are releasing completely different, opposing, contradicting pieces of information. So I found this article about this time, like 20-something of March, that the police is actually looking for a missing piece of evidence, which would have been Tangmo's scarf, that reportedly she might have been wearing on the night she had gone missing, and then the scarf is nowhere to be found, while, they found everything else. I'm not sure if they found the phones, I'm not sure if they really found everything else, but the scarf had been mentioned in one of the articles. Meanwhile, the lawyer of Tangmo's mom asked the media and the public to trust the police, saying that the case is expected to be wrapped up within a month, which it hasn't been. Just, breaking news, hasn't been wrapped up yet, so I'm not sure why that was being promised to the public. And on the other end, we have a member of the Senate committee and a forensic expert saying that the evidence compiled by the police so far from the boat or from statements of witnesses isn't sufficient to conclude that Tangmo was murdered. So what we are still waiting on is confirmation of everything in that autopsy, really. Confirmation of that cut in particular on Tangmo's leg. Did it happen before or after she fell into the water? It seems like nobody can agree on it. And what was the cause of it? That was rather like what really people can't agree upon. And that is the problem, because even if they agree that it happened before the drowning, before she died, that still doesn't really exclude that this could have been an accident. They can still get away with it if we are thinking that they have been any culprits on that boat. I've also read that a group of Tangmo's loyal fans submitted a petition and they addressed it to Justice Minister called Samsak Tepsutin and urged him to ensure justice in this high-profile case. Now, I obviously don't speak Thai, I couldn't find this petition, but can we access it? Can we sign it? Is it on like equivalent of change.org? Let me know, share it with me. If you can't submit links, because sometimes people say they can't submit links in the comments, you can find on my main profile page, on my main YouTube page, all of my social media and email as well. Email it, hit me up on Twitter, I don't care. And then I'll share it in the pinned comment. Like if there's anything that we can do, any petition, any sort of, I don't know, for the American cases, I know you could write like the template email, just putting pressure on people here, I think would bring us somewhere. Just like to clarify what is real, what isn't, to distinguish between fact and fiction, and most importantly, to actually find justice for Tangmo. The latest that I have read as to where this case stands now is that the Special Investigation Department, called DSI, is currently considering determining Tangmo Nida's cause of death as a special case. Now, the criteria for considering this a special case is the complexity of it, the public interest in it, the impact on national security, the involvement of transnational organized crime, and whether high-ranking government officials or influential people are implicated. And I think this case fits pretty much everything apart from maybe the impact on national security. Some would say it also fits the organized crime potentially based off of like what might have been going on that boat. Obviously now DSI has to wait for the further forensic examinations, like further decisions about that second autopsy, and the results of the decision whether or not this will be designated as a special case should have been known by April the 15th. And this is why I waited on Friday when I was supposed to be recording. I was like, okay, let's give it till Monday and wait. And today I searched and I couldn't find anything. So in that article, it was said that the screening subcommittee is expected to finish their work by April the 15th or May the 1st at the latest, before then submitting the full report to the Board of Special Cases for further consideration. So again, as I mentioned, I will make part 2 here. I will probably wait for a bit more to be done rather than just this consideration and what happens next. I'd like to see this case solved and then make a video here, you know, taking all of the corrections into the account, all of the information that was probably wrong during this video, because it can't all be correct. We can't all be having like contradicting statements, and I will like to wait for us to be able to distinguish between fact and fiction for sure before making part 2 here. Here is where I thought I would be ending this video, but then this article landed in my lap and there's a Scorpio. I was at least a bit content, at least for a day. So on April the 4th, 5 of the people that were on the boat, the remaining passenger that were referred to as friends, were all charged for negligence and providing false witness statements to the police. So I'll put the charges on the screen. Most of them were charged with negligence, and then Gatik was charged with giving false statements to the police, and the ones who were in charge of the boat were also charged with violating the act of navigation in Thai waters because of having no license. And this leads me to believe that there is still some evidence that is held close to the police's chest that we are not privy to, but that it must exist because of the charges that were made. The ones pressed against Gatik were particularly interesting. And they happened because she allegedly confessed to giving false statements to the police after she acknowledged the charges against her. So, from what I understood, she has told the police about Tangmo relieving herself at the back of the boat, but later she said that she didn't see this with her own eyes, so she gave two contradicting statements. You see, aligning the story at a gas station and taking a page out of How to Get Away with Murder doesn't really yield any results, does it? They're doing works in front of my house as I'm trying desperately to finish this video. I'm going nuts. I'm going nuts. So, what this means though, and these charges, as much as they made me content for a split second, it means they're all out on bail from what I've read, but they can't leave the country and have to report to the police once a week. Now, I don't know how much time or like what the consequences are, let's say, for all of the charges, but I have read the consequences for Gatik, and the charge that was filed against her for making false statements would carry a fine of up to 4,000 baht and a maximum prison sentence of 2 years. Basically a slap on the wrist. And we know all of these people have influence, so all of the charges that they have received, would they serve any time in prison? Most probably not. And even with these charges, to me, it just seems like they might have been based on the evidence that we just don't know of, but they seem to be there to just shut the public up and just hold them for anything, like all of these 5 people, just to make it seem like, you know, the police is doing something. Hey, at least charges have been made and they can't leave the country. Now, I hope to record part 2 once this case actually reaches the resolution, which hopefully would be soon, because hey, apparently the lawyer of the family believed that the case is going to be closed by the end of March, and that just didn't happen. But I wondered, like, going back to my main goal behind recording this video, what can we do? What can be done in terms of like actually putting pressure for the right information to be told to the public once it's time, and for the justice for Tangmo to be served. Because as I mentioned, where I think this case is going, unfortunately, and I would wish more than anything in part 2 to be like, hey, all of these 5 people, this is the resolution, this is what they managed to prove, and they're all behind bars, or the responsible parties, the guilty parties are behind bars, because let's not blame people until they're proven guilty. But will it happen? Will any of those people, if they have the amount of influence that I have heard that they have, will they serve a day? And that's something that, like, I think about, you know, in terms of all of these cases where everybody kind of thinks you're guilty, you know more. Even if you aren't, you are concealing information, there was some negligence involved, you're giving false statements, you know, you are guilty of something. And you are one of the 5 people that returned home alive from that boat. And like, even if you don't serve a day in prison, still, you're walking the streets, you are a known public figure, you have some sort of influence and money in the society, and everybody's looking at you thinking, you did something, you concealed something, you seem guilty. Like, I don't know what's going on through their heads right now. I would like to know how people like that go through life, especially if one of them or any of them or all of them has some guilt in this situation. Like, would you rather be in a situation where you are guilty, or you know you have concealed information, you know you have covered up for somebody, and be free, or, I don't know, serve time in prison for a crime you didn't commit? What's really the opposite of that? Would you like to be in this situation ever? Because I think people would be like, well, at least I'm not in prison, Maya, right? Like, but then you're literally going the streets and every single person is just looking at you, not believing you. You have just lost the ability to have any friends. And if they are hiding information, if they are guilty, they deserve it. But that's still to be proven. So that is the case of Tangmo Nida. Now I'm just going to roughly give an outline of a couple of theories. God bless, the sound has stopped. Of a couple of theories that I have seen online, because there are a lot of them that are out there. These ones I have seen repeated, and again, I'm letting you know these are just theories. For now, none of them have been proven. I just wanted to mention them so people don't come for my neck, because they have, as I mentioned, been in quite a few articles and sources that I have been reading. The person that most guilt has been attributed to in any of these videos on theories is Gatik, because she seems to be the shadiest one. She might have had the most motive out of all of them, and also then, you know, her behavior afterwards was suspicious, as was everybody else's. But in terms of the closeness to Tangmo, you know, the way that Tangmo actually took care of her child, and then the way she acted, she looked the shadiest out of everybody. So the speculation here is that Gatik might have lured Tangmo onto that speedboat for different reasons. So there is a theory that she might have lured her onto it for a paid job, to entertain somebody, a celebrity or a customer. But then Anna, the other manager, actually spoke out on this theory, saying that Tangmo never received a fee for entertaining guests, that there is no basis for this. The speculation here and the theories were that her dad's death might have actually left the family in debts. I haven't seen anything when researching on the background about any debts or anything like that. I mean, from everything, it seems like Tangmo had a thriving career, but apparently this is a speculation here. Even though Anna would say that this isn't correct, that Tangmo was never known to be doing this, the suspicion falls on Gatik because of some screenshots again that have been shared on social media. Apparently somebody called Bang Jack reached out to Gatik during the days when the police was still investigating this, and this person confirmed that they were on the other end of that chat that they have provided screenshots for. According to this man and this screenshot, which again I can't really translate because it's not just an easy copy-paste job, so you let me know, does this confirm anything that I'm saying? Gatik wrote, "I really don't know what to do. I don't want to say anything contradictory. I was wrong to take this job," referring to, again, Tangmo possibly entertaining a guest on this boat. This Bank Jack person, which if you know who the hell that is, let me know. Well, he said that after recording that last video that we have seen of Tangmo, she soon realized she was tricked by her group of friends, so that the whole story about her relieving herself in the boat just isn't correct. According to this man, the person that the friends wanted to meet with Tangmo is a wealthy businessman, and he was waiting for them at a hotel near the Chao Phraya River. Jack said that Gatik sent him some clips from the boat, said there was a fight, and that in the clip that Jack received, he heard man's voice saying, "I hired you, you need to see this person." According to him, in that same clip, a woman's voice says, "I said I didn't like it. I do not go. Take me home or I'll go to the police station to report the case." This information, of course, made people lose it over conspiracy theories, but I couldn't find that video. I could only find those screenshots of the messages, and even there I don't really understand them, so I don't know if the information is correct. How valid is this source, and is there any truth to that? Why would Gatik, after really attempting to cover up so much information to align the story at this gas station, really go out of her way not to be contacted by anybody, then just screw it up like this? Or, I don't know, not have a cover-up story for this, not delete this information from her record? I don't know. Another motivation could have been that the men were actually responsible, and that, you know, Tangmo's friends, Gatik and Sand, have lured her onto that boat. The disposal of the evidence might have then been done because maybe Tangmo's drinks have been spiked, maybe she had been drunk, and the supposition there is that that probably happened for people to take advantage of her, for somebody to rape her. Maybe there was money involved for like Gatik to be paid off for luring her onto that boat trip. I don't know, there's nothing really supporting that apart from the fact that the glasses and the bottles might have never been found, and there might be evidence that they have been disposed, and that's why, you know, some of those charges have been brought. In my personal opinion here, I think, as hard as it is really with this part one and with information out there, I try to differentiate fact from fiction here and just see what we actually have confirmed. So we have Tangmo falling off of that boat in some way, whether it is accident, whether she has been pushed, whether her drowning had been assisted. We have evidence destruction, apparent destruction of evidence that included bottles and glasses. So those two combined kind of align with the false statement charges as well, and that is because 5 people can't keep their story straight. Now, I don't think these 5 people were masterminds either. I don't think that this is some sort of organized crime where they have planned this for days, because also for these charges to have been brought, they had them on CCTV, they had their phones, or at least some of their phones, and they discovered some of the conversations. That already tells me that they're not the masterminds, because if they had thought this through, you know, they had them on the CCTV of the gas station. Like, if they have thought anything through, and if they really tried to, like, basically premeditate the shit out of this, they would have deleted certain evidence. They wouldn't have then just messaged further and further in order to incriminate themselves. And I also think because they're not professionals, that is why we know that they have also tried to get rid of some evidence, at least, when it came to the glasses and the bottles. And, you know, they can't align the story when it comes to life jackets. So you just know exactly where they failed, where they didn't have the story straight, because they didn't really think this through. I still, however, think it could be some sort of intimidation technique, or even possibly drugging her for rape or any other sort of nefarious action that they wanted to impose onto Tangmo on this boat. Or it could have been an accident. It could have been an accident that they had to cover up. Could have been just a scuffle, you know, somebody, like an argument ensuing, her falling from that boat, cutting her leg, and then I'm trying to imagine this and just think about like 5 people on the boat seeing like the amount of blood that just that cut would have caused. Like the amount of panic that would have probably ensued. Like, yes, any normal person would have then helped their friend out and wouldn't have actually done anything in order to basically cause their death. But could that have been the most innocent quote-unquote pathway? But like what actually happened, I think it still could have. I mean, if they have assisted then in her drowning, yes, there is an accident. And that is where the problem in this story lies. which is also where the grounds for cover-up lie. Because even if it were an accident, even if it came just from the most innocent argument, even if there was nothing else behind it, then they have done their best from that point on to cover this story up, to cover something up, to cover up for somebody, if not for all of them, and set their story straight in the aftermath and do their best to stick by it. And yes, at certain points that has failed them, because apparently 5 people can't keep a secret, as we know. I mean, it's hard enough for 2 people to just keep their story straight. But if so, if any of this is true, if there is a cover-up about any one of these people, with the developments in this story, the combination of luck, money, and connections within the police, they somehow, stupidly enough, might just get away with it. And that is the pain point in this story. As I mentioned, I wish I eat my words up. I'll be the first one to start part 2 being like, I was wrong. I was wrong. They have figured it out. They have found out the guilty party. And they are spending their precious time behind bars. But for that, one of them needs to slip up. And so far, the odds have just been working in their favor, which is just making me like fume. It's just making me rage so much. Because it's scary. It's the scariest thing that this is the world we live in. Because this is a celebrity. This is an A-list celebrity in Thailand. And if this can happen to Tangmo, who is to say that this can't happen to any of us? But that is the story of the suspicious death that is yet not to be defined as anything else of Tangmo Nida. So I would like to know your theories in the comments. Which one makes the most sense to you? How many people do you believe might be guilty here, or do you think that this is just an accident? I hate this case so much. When I have heard of it, I was like, I need to research this. I need to figure out if there is more information. I need the gaps filled. That is my main thing. I need the gaps filled. I need to know what is fact, what is fiction, and what can we do. What can we do? Because this case is dying down. Basically, that article from the 4th of April is the last thing that I found here, and that's infuriating. Why is it the last article that I have found here? Why didn't they decide? Should it be the special case by the 15th of March? Why are they stalling? Why is the case dying down? What can we do to keep it alive, but for the correct information to come out and for the right people to be prosecuted? I just say it that way. But that is it for me for this week. Next week I'm bringing you one other interesting case, and then we are going to our next deep dive. I think it's a 2-parter. And after that, as I have posted in a community post, words not coming out in the right way right now, I'm looking for a stalker case. So go find a community post, or just in the comments let me know your recommendations. English, immigrant things, not the first language. As if you could do this better in Serbian. Shut up. Stalker cases, let me know of any lesser known stalker cases that you want me to dig my claws in, do another deeper dive. And hopefully one day we're gonna meet here again for part 2 on Tangmo Nida, okay? And everything is gonna be resolved, okay? Or I will not see the end of it. I will have nightmares to fucking end of my life. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Anger management issues gotta be resolved. Gotta do like... Did Charlie Sheen go for anger management? You wanna contact Charlie Sheen? Do you want to contact Charlie Sheen to ask him how did that anger management course do it? For what reason? Can you afford anger management issues classes that Charlie Sheen attended? No, this is so pointless. Why did this cross my mind? Why did Charlie Sheen cross my out of every single person in this universe? Disgusting. He was good at 2.5 Men. He was like problematic even then. Did you not do Heidi Fleiss video? He was problematic from the get-go. Okay. I'm gonna go now and not think about Charlie Sheen, because there are other things and priorities for me to do right now. Like edit this video. Yeah, cool. Every single sound has been picked up by this fucking god-forsaken mic this day. Bye guys, bye now. I'm not an angry person. Okay.